representation in rooting for the Lakers. Senator Villar is recognized.
I object, Mr. President. I object.
Mamshi, you're in mute, Mamshi. Ma'am.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. I want to make a manifestation based on a published article which is entitled Saving Economy and Jobs or Saving Lives, an Unnecessary Choice. It says in the article, based on a study of UNDP and the Ateneo de Manila University, that we don't have to do lockdowns as long as we increase the capacity of our healthcare institutions to 33% from the present 19%. I'm glad that our committee report provided that we will require healthcare facilities to do as follows. For a whole healthcare institution to comply strictly with the DOH requirement on both government and private hospitals to maintain at least 30% of their bed capacity for COVID-19 patients, as stated in DOH Administrative Order number 2020-016, dated May 4, 2020. Also for private and public hospitals that receive IRM fund should allocate and maintain an additional 7% of their bed capacity as ICU beds for COVID-19 patients at critical stage, while the other healthcare institution should be required as well to allocate and maintain an additional 5% of their bed capacity to ICU beds for COVID-19 patients. And for those levels 2 and 3 hospitals which receive funds from IRM to establish appropriate COVID-19 testing facility, the cost of the said testing laboratory must be factored in the amount already dispersed to them under the IRM. And for hospital and healthcare institutions to only purchase personal protective equipment or PPEs that are not substandard and preferably sourced locally or made in the Philippines to increase employment for our people during this time of pandemic. Thank you, Mr. President and our Senator Lacson for including these provisions in our committee report. Maraming salamat po.
Thanks, Senator Villar. There's no one else on the list. By the way,
Mr. President? Yes.
yes, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there's a request. I was just given a message by our dear Senate President to request that all those lined for interpellation, if it can be done tomorrow. He's requesting if we can do it tomorrow.
I confirm that because a similar request was also made earlier to this
Yes.
representation. So
with that, Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration of the said measure till tomorrow, Mr. President.
there's a motion to suspend consideration of Senate Resolution 461, 474, 475 under Committee Report 107. Is there an objection? Hearing none, suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have a request from our dear colleague to avail of the privilege hour. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, may we recognize the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela, Mr. President, to avail of the privilege hour.
Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized to avail of the privilege hour.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gandang hapon po sa lahat. Before I begin, Mr. President, let me congratulate our Senate President for delivering a very exhaustive and very detailed investigation on the field health, and let me also congratulate the good Vice Chairman of the Committee of the Whole, Senator Ping Lacson, for bringing out a lot of the controversies and allowing the public to learn about these controversies. Alam niyo, Senate President, nung nakikinig po ako sa inyo all 2 hours of your speech, napapailing po ako sa ismaya at napapailing na rin po ako sa galit. At tataka po ako kung paano po nakapasok po yung mga ganitong klaseng tao sa serbisyo publiko na ngayon pa po natin kailangan ng PhilHealth sa paglaban po sa COVID. And Mr. President, your privilege speech, your report is timely. Kanina po narinig ko po yung interview ni incoming PhilHealth President Attorney Heran. At sabi niya nangangapa po siya kung saan siya mag-uumpisa. Pero dahil meron po tayong isang komprehensibong report on the anomalies of PhilHealth, pwede niya pong gamitin to as his battle plan against corruption. So I would like to suggest, Mr. President, to furnish the incoming President a copy of our committee report, and this can be his battle plan to weed out corruption and corrupt officials in PhilHealth. Mr. President.
The suggestion is well taken. We will do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. President, on a separate topic, which I will be giving my privilege speech on, this is a very different topic from PhilHealth. Mr. President, respected colleagues, good afternoon. Mr. President, I take the floor today to bring to the attention of this esteemed body an issue that has been on my radar since the beginning of my political career: garbage, or basura. When I ran for mayor of Valenzuela City for the first time way back in 2004, one of the key points of my platform of governance was to address the city's worsening garbage problem. Unfortunately, what was once just considered a problem that needed to be addressed at the local level has grown into a national crisis that requires immediate concerted action from government and civil society. To cut to the chase, Mr. President, the Philippines is facing a garbage crisis, and we need to act now before it is too late. Truth be told, Mr. President, the garbage crisis we are facing today has been driven in large part by the happy development of 2 strong decades of steady economic growth as well as rapid population growth. After posting a negative gross domestic product growth in 1998, the Philippine GDP grew annually over a span of 20 straight years between 1999 to 2019 at a brisk average rate of 5.36%. During that same period, the population of the Philippines grew from 75.33 million as reported in the 2000 census to an estimated 108 million in 2019 with an annual average growth rate of 1.78%. This is the second fastest population growth rate in ASEAN during those 2 decades, second only to Singapore's 1.8%. All these have led to an increase in industry and consumer demand for raw inputs and finished goods. In very layman terms, we are using a lot more stuff today than we did 20 years ago. A natural consequence of this is that we are also producing a lot more waste than we did before. Using the 2015 waste generation data of the National Solid Waste Management Commission, we project that from 14.66 million metric tons of waste produced in 2014, we will produce 16.63 million metric tons in 2020, a 13.44% increase. By way of comparison, the Philippines generate the 3rd most solid waste per annum among ASEAN countries based on 2018 data. Only Thailand and Indonesia produce more. To make the data more relatable, Mr. President, let us discuss what these numbers mean at the micro level. This year, the average Filipino produces 0.414 kilograms of solid waste every day. That doesn't sound like too much. Well, by December 31, 2020, the accumulated daily solid waste produced by each Filipino will amount to 150 kilograms. This means that the average Filipino adult produces between 2 to 3 times their own body weight in trash over the course of a single year. We project that by 2030, each Filipino will be producing 5 additional kilograms of solid waste per year. The result of this will be an overall increase of annual solid waste production, or a total of 20.51 million metric tons by 2030. This is a 39.90% increase compared to the 2014 numbers. Now I am sure that we are all in agreement that it is a lot of garbage. But exactly how much is it? Well, Mr. President, allow me to put the sheer magnitude of our national garbage production in more tangible terms. The 16.6 million tons of solid waste we are expected to produce by the end of this year is equivalent to 58.2 million cubic meters. This is enough trash to fill 23,279 Olympic-sized swimming pools. This is enough garbage to fill 99 entire Philippine arenas from the ground all the way to the top of the dome. If we continue down this current path of waste generation, the amount of solid waste we are projected to produce in 2030 is enough to fill an additional 5,435 Olympic-sized swimming pools or another 24 Philippine arenas. Mr. President, should we note at this point that municipal solid waste is a broad term that covers different types of garbage. In terms of waste composition, the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DNR's 2014 data states that 52% of municipal solid waste in the Philippines is biodegradable, such as food scraps, kitchen waste, and garden waste. 28% is recyclable, such as certain plastics, paper, metals, glass, textiles, leather, and rubber. 2% is special waste, such as paints, thinners, batteries, oil, and consumer electronics. And 18% is residual waste, such as sanitary napkins, disposable diapers, contaminated paper, and candy wrappers. The proper management of this waste has been enshrined in Republic Act Number 9003, or the Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. The law provides a clear policy framework for solid waste management in the Philippines, with a strong emphasis on LGU empowerment. Unfortunately, 20 years after its enactment, the law is yet to be fully realized. We have identified 3 areas of concern when it comes to the implementation of RA 9003. The first area of concern is the lack of segregation. Different components of solid waste need to be segregated for the purposes of composting, recycling, and final disposal. However, during the January 28, 2020 hearing of the Committee on Energy, the DNR mentioned that only 30% of barangays actually segregate their collected waste properly. This implies that the mismanagement of solid waste produced by as much as 77 million Filipinos throughout the course of their day-to-day lives. The lack of waste segregation is also likely caused in large by the second area of concern, lack of materials recovery facility, or MRF. RA 9003 provides that every barangay or cluster of barangays should have its own MRF. The MRF is where LGUs are supposed to receive, segregate, process, and even store waste. Essentially, MRF play a critical role in ensuring that different types of waste are properly disposed of. Unfortunately, as of 2014, only 31% of barangays had access to MRFs. This means that only 3 out of 10 Filipinos live in barangays with proper waste segregation facilities. This is a problem because without MRFs, the waste collected by LGUs may not be segregated properly. Thus, many materials which could have been recycled or composted will just be dumped instead. Based on my experience in Valenzuela City, this is an especially troublesome problem in urban barangays where MRFs were not built due to lack of land space. The third area of concern, and perhaps the most troubling one, is the country's lack of sanitary landfills. RA 9003 provides that all residual waste must be disposed in sanitary landfills. Sanitary landfills are specifically designed, constructed, and operated to minimize environmental and health hazard posed by the dumping of this waste. An open dump where garbage is indiscriminately disposed without any environmental and health protections are strictly prohibited. Sadly, Mr. President, illegal open dump sites in the Philippines outnumber sanitary landfills by a ratio of 2.5 to 1. DNR show that there are 164 sanitary landfills as of 2018, but 404 illegal open dump sites. What's more, DNR records for the same year show that only 22% of the 1,634 cities and municipalities nationwide can be accommodated by these sanitary landfills. This implies that 3 out of every 4 cities and municipalities have nowhere to properly dispose of their residual waste. Even if the number of sanitary landfill increases to 662 in 2025 as projected, DNR estimates that this can only properly dispose roughly 40% of LGU waste generated that year. Unless the capacity of waste ends up in sanitary landfills is reduced and the number of solid waste management treatment facilities are increased, the remaining 60% of municipal solid waste will end up in our drainage system, streets, forests, mountains, lakes, rivers, beaches, seas, and oceans. This will contaminate our water and our air. It will also make large stretches of land unusable for any other purpose after being used as a sanitary landfill or worse, as an illegal dump site. This accumulation of waste poses significant danger not just to the environment but to public health as well. In 2016 study by Ziraba et al. Noted that exposure to solid waste is not limited to those who come into direct contact with it while working or living in landfills or dumps. People who live in communities which host solid waste dumps are also at risk of suffering from several forms of cancer, respiratory symptoms, irritation of the skin, nose, and eyes, gastrointestinal problems, fatigue, headache, psychological disorders, and allergies. Another study by Porta et al. Found that babies born in communities within 2 kilometers of a landfill or illegal dump are also found to be more likely to suffer from congenital defects or low birth weight. Unfortunately, Mr. President, with the risk of public health and the environment does not stop there. We must also contend with the far-reaching consequences of leachate at waste disposal sites. According to Nostrada et al., leachate is produced when water filters down through a landfill or dump site and picks up dissolved materials from the decomposing waste. This filthy water can contaminate both groundwater and surface water and eventually pollute the food chain with heavy materials, heavy metals, and other toxic substances. These adverse health risks would affect not only those living at or near the waste disposal site. It will also affect the health of anyone who has contact with the contaminated water or food chain. The same study found that residents living near the Sabak dump site in Malaysia have a significantly higher risk of sore throat, diabetes, and hypertension. The negative health effects are true for all jurisdictions as well. In South Africa, residents near a landfill frequently reported influenza-like illness, eye irritation, and body weakness compared to those living farther from the site. While in Helsinki, Finland, people in a former landfill area were 1.63 times more likely to have asthma compared to people living outside. Detrimental health repercussions were also recorded for people living in landfills in South Wales, United Kingdom, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Mr. President, it is clear that the implications of the garbage crisis are simply too grave for us to sit back and do nothing. We must take action now and to end the garbage crisis before it degrades the environment and poisons the body of future generations of Filipinos. The most immediate action we can take, Mr. President, is to urgently and strictly implement the 5 R's of the waste hierarchy. Refuse generating waste, reduce the amount of waste produced, reuse materials, recycle waste materials, recover other uses for residual garbage. Implementing the 5R requires fostering a new culture of conservation and sustainability within our household and communities. Mr. President, I humbly call on the Senate to lead the charge in this cultural shift by crafting and implementing guidelines to refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle right here in the Senate. I am confident that implementing simple policies such as discouraging the use of disposable masks by non-medical personnel, encouraging the use of refillable water bottles and washable food containers, and transitioning towards a paperless work ecosystem in the Senate would make an impact, set a good example for others to adopt the 5R culture. Nevertheless, Mr. President, even if everyone practices the first 4 Rs, this garbage crisis will not be solved without the fifth and most difficult R, how to recover serviceable materials from residual waste. Mr. President, one of the solutions to dealing with the residual waste conundrum is to diversify the types of solid waste management treatment facilities in the Philippines to include waste-to-energy facilities. These facilities have a dual function of producing additional energy and minimizing the volume of waste for final disposal. This is a topic the Senate Energy Committee has studied closely as it addresses stability and sustainability, two principles which have guided my leadership as the chair of the committee. I'm excited to report on this more in greater detail in the near future, specifically how energy technologies can help the country's waste problem. Just to reiterate, Mr. President, the Philippines is facing a garbage crisis that threatens to do irreversible damage to ecosystem across the country and human lives. We, together with other agencies and instrumentalities from national government, LGU, and civil society, should practice, inform, and educate our fellow Filipinos on how to effectively implement the 5 Rs. There is still hope for us to solve the Philippine garbage crisis, Mr. President. However, time is running out. We need to act now. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there's a request from our colleague, Senator Pia Cayetano, to if the gentleman is willing to be interpolated by Senator Cayetano, and after which Senator Villar and Senator Ontiveros as well.
Right. Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With the permission of the sponsor, could I just make a few comments and maybe ask just 1 or 2 questions?
Yes, Mr. President.
Bismillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh sa mga kapatiran Muslim, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, kundi sa buong mundo. Good day mga ka-online. Nandito na naman po ako para po magatid sa inyo ng mga magandang bagay dito sa online way of living, Owltv. Sana po nagustuhan nyo ang pinag-usapan tungkol sa problema natin sa basura. Ang problema ng basura ay nakaabot na po sa Senado yan dahil akala natin napakaliit na bagay ang basura. Pero kung titingnan natin ang paligid natin, sa bawat kanto may mga basura. At pagka umulan, ang makikita natin, mga basura. So ngayon, pinag-usapan na sa Senado yan kung paano maayos ang problema sa basura. Sapagkat kapag hindi binigyan ng susi, kapag hindi binigyan ng panahon, ang tungkol sa problemang yan, lalala at lalala po yan. Lalala. Kaya nagpapasalamat po kami mga Pilipino, sa mga tao na binibigyan ng panahon ang tungkol sa issue ng basura. At muli, kaya pasalamatan namin ang Senado at kung sino pang mga tao na may pahalaga tungkol sa basura na may ayos ito. Hindi lang po tapon dito, tapon doon. Okay? Sana po intindihan natin na kaya pinag-uusapan natin ang tungkol sa basura ay para sa atin pong kapakanan yan. Para sa bawat Pilipino na sa bandang dulo, tayo po ang makikinabang sa ikakabuti nito. Dahil sa totoo lang, ang basura po, sa basura ay may pera. Kung tama po lang ang ating gagawin. Pero pagka winalang-bala po natin ito, babalik din po sa atin ang gagawin natin. Diba? Nakita niyo Manila Bay? Pagkatapos ng bagyo, ang daming basura sa gilid. Truck ang hinahakot. Itatapon nila ulit sa landfill, tapos babalik ulit dun sa Manila Bay. Paikot-ikot lang. So once and for all, sana po mabigyan na ng solusyon ang tungkol sa ating basura. Ngayon po ang sinasabi ko, online way of living. Ngayon, dadalhin ko po kayo sa online way of learning. Owltv pa rin. Owltv. Pero, ang ating online way of living, ay online way of learning, ay tungkol pa rin sa mga basura. Yung mga bata ngayon na nakikinig sa akin, mag-aaral kayo, di ba? October 5 yata, magbubukas ng klase. Pero, pag-aralan natin ngayon, ang tamang paghawak sa basura o pagtatapon ng basura. Huwag po tayo magtapon ng basura kung saan-saan. Ilagay natin sa tamang lalagyan. Kung wala tayong matapunan ng malit na basura natin, ibulsa natin. Ibulsa natin. Pag may nakita tayong basura, saka natin itapon. Ilagay lang natin ang basura sa tamang lalagyan. Di ba? Kung nasa sasakyan ka, dapat paglagay ka ng basura sa kotse. O kaya, supot na pwede mong paglagyan ng basura. Huwag po tayo magtapon ng basura sa labas. Dahil, kung iisipin mo, bakit ikaw lang nagtapon? Eh, kung lahat ng 109 Filipinos, o kaya, yung 60 million of voting population, sabay-sabay na nagtatapon ng basura araw-araw, mapupuno agad ng Pilipinas natin. So, kailangan po na ingatan natin ang pagtatapon ng basura. Doon lang po sa tamang tapunan. Isipin natin na mahalin natin ang ating bansang Pilipinas sapagkat ang ating basurang itinapon sa kung saan ay babalik din sa atin at magiging hamon ng kalikasan yan. Kaya ingatan po natin ang ating bansa, ingatan po natin ang ating kalikasan para maingatan natin ang ating buhay. So, lahat po yan, bata, matanda, magulang, kahit sino, ilagay po natin sa tama ang ating basura. Sana po may natutunan kayo sa aking maikling panayam sa inyo sapagkat ang online way of learning, hindi po yan magtataas ng antas ng inyong pag-aaral. Kundi aktual na pag-aaral yan tungkol sa ating buhay. Again, huwag natin kalilimutan, sabihan natin ang I love you, yung ating mga mahal sa buhay, yung ating magulang, yung ating kapatid, yung ating tito. No? I love you tayo dahil yan ay libre. Wala pang bayad yan. Yung po at saka opo natin, gamitin natin sa maayos. Palagi tayong mag-aral sa loob ng isang araw. Kahit anong bagay basta matutunan natin at maganda, pag-aralan po natin. Pag-aralan po natin. Huwag tayong magsawa sa pagbabasa. Pagbabasa hanggat hindi pa nagkakaroon ng diferensya ang mata nyo. Ako kasi may diferensya ng mata ko, hindi na ako masyadong makakita ng letra. No? Okay lang sa akin magka-diferensya ang mata ko, basta palagi kong nakikita na maganda ang misis ko. Yun lang. No? Pasaya na ako nun.
Nice.
At huwag tayo makalimot sa ating Diyos. Kung sino man, kung Kristiyano ka, kung sino man ang Diyos mo, kung Muslim ka, sa aming Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, depende kung anong paniniwala mo. Basta ang sa akin, maniwala kayo na may supreme being. Okay? At isaulo nyo ang multiplication table. Pakiusap lang. isaulo nyo ang notification. Again, huwag niyo pong kalimutan na i-subscribe, i-like, i-subscribe ang ating Owltv, sapagkat iyan po ay makakatulong sa atin sa hinaharap. At i-share po natin ito sa iba nating mga kasama para po makinig sa atin. At nagpapasalamat po ako sa mga senador na tatalakay ang tungkol sa ating basura. Sa mga ka-online, again, huwag po kayong mag-asawang makinig sapagkat magkakaroon po ng isang segment ang Owltv tungkol naman sa kaalaman, no? Tungkol sa mga balita, sa kaalaman, pinag-aaralan ng aking asawang si Marimem kung paano namin nagagawin. Allahuakbar. Again, good day mga kaunlan.